Topic of today is there such a thing as justice? And this is a topic that has been requested before. And this was a topic that we got all the way back when we once did a survey in Belgium about which topics people would like to know about. And we got this topic as one of the topics that was requested. And it's always a bit of a difficult topic, but let's just dive into it and see what we can learn from it. So there's a lot of timeless questions that people always ask and people struggle with, such as why is there inequality in the world? Why is there suffering in the world? And if there is something spiritual out there, why do these injustices exist? And how should we deal with this as a responsible citizen? So these are like the sort of questions that sometimes people struggle with. If the world really is has a lot of spiritual meaning, then why is there suffering or something like that? Or maybe some people, if you believe in God, then maybe the question will be more direct. If there is God, then why there's suffering? That's a very classic question. These are maybe some answers that people might have. Why people have a free will and it is their fault when they suffer. It's sometimes known as the just world theory or the fair world theory. Or some people believe that if God or Allah or Brahma has a plan, then what happens to people? Why people suffer is because they are suffering in order to learn. But you can't really understand that plan. It's the plan of God. But some people believe that people have to suffer now, but they might be happy in the next life. So what does Buddhism say about these things? Is it true that when people suffer, it's always their fault? There is a while back, about 25 years ago, there was this guy here in the picture. He was a coach in a British football team. For those who are American among us, the football is a European sport, which is different from American football. So that's soccer for Americans among us. So this coach actually was fired because he made a statement. The most important reason for that he got fired was that he made a statement saying that he believed in karma, and he believed that if people were disabled, then it was because of their karma. And that was that really got a lot of bad press, that statement that he made. And he didn't retract the statement. He simply said that he simply thought of it as a spiritual belief, and he didn't think of it as something that would interfere with his work. And but he got fired because of it. And I remember very clearly that when that controversy was, when there was this controversy, there was also a discussion in the Netherlands about this topic as well. And the Tibetan monk, there still was a Tibetan monk in the Netherlands at that time, and he was interviewed about that, and he just simply said, yeah, that's what Buddhism says as well. When people are disabled, it's because of bad karma. So he apparently he didn't know that it was a controversial statement. So he just doubled down on it, but he was not aware of how controversial that was. So this is kind of this difficult topics to talk about. And maybe we just maybe look at it a bit more deeper. So in order to understand what's going on here, we have to understand what really karma is, because all of these confusion and all of these controversies, they arise because people don't really understand what karma is. So first of all, there's a very small text when the Buddha says there is three things which makes you passive when you are not taking responsibility for your life. And these three things are absolutely different from a belief in the law of karma. First of all, blame everything on your karma. That's not the law of karma. There is old karma, and then there's new karma. Some things in our lives, they come from old karma in the past. But there's also the responsibility that we take now, new karma. The old karma is what we did in the past and what affects our present moment. But we also have the ability to change things in the here and now. So the Buddha, he clearly said, if you want to talk about the sort of convictions that cause people to become passive, not take responsibility for their lives, then the first thing is karma. If you believe it in a wrong way, it can be like that. There was a guy who came to me once, and he said he believed in karma because the other day he killed a mouse in his house. And he believed it was the karma of the mouse. He had to kill him. So that kind of belief is not really the right way to look at karma. Because karma is always a personal thing. You have to take responsibility for your actions. And it's not like this person or that person has a karma and therefore we must act in a certain way. That's not freedom. The other thing is blame it on God's will, which is like you believe that everything is controlled by God or some higher intelligence. You know, the Gen Z or the next generation, they like to say that everything is the universe. If you want to call it the universe or you want to call it God, if you believe everything has been determined by God or by the universe, then you have no freedom to do anything as a human being, to change things, to make your own decisions. So the Buddha, he literally said that you should not just in the believe that everything has been determined by some God. So this is not saying that the Buddha was against all religions which involve God. Buddhism is not atheist, but Buddhism says we have to believe that we can change things. Or blame it on destiny. Some people in the time of the Buddha, they believed that everything was a fixed destiny, but it wasn't God's plan or something like that. It wasn't the plan of God, but it was simply just a sort of determined route that people had to go on. People don't really, that's not really a religious belief anymore these days, but some scientists do believe that. Some scientists do believe that. They believe that everything's been determined by physical circumstances, by physics, and by the way our brain works or something like that. So in all these cases, the Buddha said it's not how life works. Because when you really look deeply at life, there is always the possibility to change things. So this is important when we talk about justice. Then when we, in the West, when we talk about justice, we often misunderstand that karma is the same as sort of justice coming from a sort of higher intelligence. So when we get the question, do disabled people, do they have karma from the past? Then we have to understand that there is no justice there. Buddhism doesn't say that when people suffer, there is justice in that. When people are poor and that may be because of karma in the past, or when people are in difficult circumstances, like in war, and that is because of karma in the past. Is that all? Is that the simple answer? Well, in Buddhism, we say that there is karma from the past, but it doesn't always mean that that is justice, because what we have done in many lifetimes ago may not have much to do anymore with who we are right now. People change all the time. That's what the Buddha meant when he talked about not self. We are changing all the time. When we are doing good in our lives, we are building up good karma for the future, for our future self. But our future self is not exactly the same person as our present self. We are changing all the time. If you look back at your previous, at your, when you were a kid, right? It was, we were different. It's not exactly like you feel like you are the same person as when you were a kid. It's changed. You changed, but you're not different either. You're not completely different. So people, things change all the time. People change all the time. But we cannot just say that when people suffer, they are poor, that is just, that is right. Or when people are disabled because of karma or something like that, it is right. It is not, there's nothing right about that. Because the law of karma in Buddhism is simply a law of nature. There is no God's will or some higher intelligence in there. It's simply a law of nature that we have to deal with. And so when we understand this law of nature, we can then use it in the right way. But it doesn't mean that when people face a certain karma, that it's always the right thing. There is the basics of Buddhism, right? There is greed, hatred, and delusion. These are the three defilements. Negative emotions and unrealistic perceptions that we all suffer from, that we all have in lesser or more, to more or lesser extent. And sometimes we look for suffering outside. We think that we suffer because of things outside of us. We think that we suffer because of this kind of bad guy that is creating a war, or we suffer because of that bad guy who's creating a war. We think that that is the cause of suffering, but then we forget that who was the one who got that man, that bad guy who is creating a war, who got that man into power in the first place? Well, it was people like you and me. So it's always comes back to us, right? We suffer because of that. What? Because of greed, hatred, and delusion. In the Buddhist text, the Buddha actually talks about this. He says that there are places where villages are destroyed, where provinces are destroyed, where entire countries are destroyed. And why? Because of greed, hatred, and delusion. So even in the time of the Buddha, there was war, there was conflict like that. And there was environmental problems. And all of these things is because of greed, hatred, and delusion that causes those such things. So there are problems, but we always have to understand that in Buddhism, we always think that the real cause of suffering of humankind is always the mind that doesn't work as it should work. The Buddha, he said, whatever an enemy might do to an enemy, or a foe to a foe, the ill-directed mind can do to you even worse. And the opposite is also true. No friend, no family member, not even our closest loved ones can bring us happiness the way the mind that is well-directed can bring us happiness. So this is very important. The mind is what causes us to suffer and what causes us to find happiness. And it's also what causes our lives to be a mess or to be good. It's okay, this is maybe all of you will notice by now, okay? This is like the basics of Buddhism. But it's important to think about this often, because when we are hearing about the news and we are starting to doom scroll through the news and we think, oh, this is going wrong, that is going wrong. Sometimes you forget there is all of the suffering that human beings go through. It's always has to do with our mind, with the way our habits work. What is wholesome and unwholesome in Buddhism? When we are doing deeds, words, or thoughts that are rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion, we call this unwholesome. We call this a wrong action. And then the other opposite is also true when we act on wholesome roots. Wholesome roots is like when we have positive emotions like loving kindness, like generosity, like wisdom, sharp mind, looking at the grasping at the right end of the stick, trying understanding things right. That all of that is wholesome. It's good. So good and bad in Buddhism have to do with the working of the mind. And that is very important to think about when we think about justice, when we think about how the world works. So what the law of karma says in Buddhism is that when we think or speak or act under the influence of greed, hatred, or delusion, we then sow the crops. We're sowing the crops, and that will ripen in suffering in our lives.